I never thought I would say these words out loud, but sometimes life arranges itself in such twisted knots that the only way to survive is to speak, to pour it all out, as if confession itself could untangle what time and secrets have buried. My name is Claire, and I am 30 years old. For most of my life, I lived with the shadow of absence, with a hole that could never be filled, because my mother disappeared when I was just a girl. 10 years of silence, 10 years of unanswered questions, 10 years of imagining her face in crowds, hearing her voice in the wind, or dreaming of her walking back through the front door as if nothing had happened. When you grow up missing a mother, the world doesn't feel whole. I tried to pretend otherwise, but there were moments, little ones, piercing ones, that reminded me of what I lost. At school, when classmates brought their moms to the mother-daughter tea, I sat alone at the edge of the table, stirring lukewarm lemonade, pretending my aunt's presence was enough. On my birthdays, I blew out candles, wishing for something I could never say aloud, not even to myself. Bring her back. Even the smell of certain perfumes in department stores could cut through me like glass, because they reminded me of the way her hugs lingered. And yet for 10 years, there was nothing, not a letter, not a phone call, not a sign of life. My father never spoke about her. He swallowed her absence the way men sometimes swallow grief, tight-lipped, rigid, refusing to admit the wound even existed. If I asked, his face would harden, his jawline sharpening with anger or maybe sorrow, I was never sure. He always said the same words. "She's gone, Claire. Let her go." But I couldn't. How does a daughter let go of the one person who gave her life? I grew up holding that ache, carrying it like a stone in my chest, and by the time I reached my 20s, it had shaped me. I learned to be cautious with people, always afraid they disappeared too. I learned to mistrust promises, even when they came wrapped in tenderness. And maybe that's why, when Michael came into my life, I clung to him with both hands, terrified and yet desperately hopeful. Michael was kind, steady, and gentle in the ways I had always craved. He knew my silences, read the sadness behind my eyes, and instead of running from it, he stayed. When he proposed, under the golden autumn leaves in the park where we had our first kiss, I felt something inside me unclench for the first time in years. I thought maybe, just maybe, I could build a new family, one that wasn't defined by loss. The morning of my wedding day arrived like a dream. The house was buzzing with laughter, with cousins and bridesmaids bustling around, the scent of fresh roses in the air, the white fabric of my gown flowing like water. I remember standing in front of the mirror, veil draped over my face, and whispering to my reflection, "If only you were here, Mom. If only you could see me now." And then, as if those words themselves had summoned her, she appeared. The room went still. My cousin dropped a hairbrush to the floor, the clatter echoing like thunder. My breath caught in my throat. There she was, my mother. After 10 years of silence, 10 years of wondering if she was even alive, she stood in a doorway in a simple black dress, her eyes shimmering with something I couldn't name. Older, thinner, but unmistakably her. I felt my knees weaken, as if the ground itself had vanished beneath me. My heart pounded in my ears, my throat constricted, and for a second, I thought I was hallucinating. But no, she was real. Real enough to send shivers down my spine. Real enough to open the floodgates of rage and longing all at once. "Mom?" The word fell from my lips, trembling, broken, almost foreign. She smiled faintly, as if she had been waiting for me to say it. "Yes, baby. It's me." And in that moment, my wedding day, the day I thought would be only about love and new beginnings, became something else entirely. It became the day every wound I carried split open again. I should have run to her, hugged her, demanded answers. But instead I froze. 10 years of abandonment pressed down on me like iron chains. She disappeared without a trace, left me to grow up motherless, and now she wanted to walk in as if she could stitch herself back into the tapestry of my life. The room began to buzz again, whispers rising like bees. My aunt, who had practically raised me, stiffened with rage. Her eyes locked on my mother with an expression that could have shattered glass. My father wasn't there yet, but I knew, I knew, that when he arrived and saw her, something catastrophic would happen. I swallowed hard, my veil trembling with my breaths. Why now? Why today? Her face crumpled. Because it's the day you need me the most. I wanted to scream at her. Where were you when I needed you the most? Where were you on my 16th birthday, when I cried myself to sleep because Dad wouldn't even say her name? Where were you when I graduated high school, scanning the crowd for a face that never came? Where were you every time I broke into pieces, wishing for a mother to hold me? But the words wouldn't come. My throat ached too much. Instead, I just stared, my entire body trembling between fury and desperate hunger. Hunger for her arms, for her presence, for her love. The wedding planner bustled in nervously, trying to restore order, but even she seemed to sense that this moment was something untouchable, sacred and broken all at once. My mother stepped forward. Claire, I've come to tell you the truth. Everything you've been told about me. It's not what you think. The truth. The word seared through me. Behind me, my aunt let out a sharp, bitter laugh. Don't listen to her, Claire. She doesn't deserve your ears. Not today. She doesn't deserve anything from you. The air turned heavy like a storm building. My hands shook, and I had to grip the edge of the vanity to steady myself. What truth? What story could possibly excuse 10 years of silence? What explanation could repair the scars I carried? But something in my mother's eyes, something raw and desperate, told me that this wasn't just about abandonment. There was more. Before I could answer, the door burst open again. My father entered, dressed in his suit, his face pale and stunned as if he'd seen a ghost. His eyes locked on her, and in that instant, I saw something I'd never seen before. Not just rage, not just grief, but fear. Get out, he spat, his voice trembling. You don't belong here. My mother's face tightened. I do. And you know it. The tension in the room was unbearable, like a string pulled to the breaking point. Everyone froze, unsure of what to do. My father took a step forward, fists clenched. Not today. Not on her wedding day. You won't ruin this too. And then she said something that shattered the room like glass. You never told her the truth, did you? About why I left? About what you did? The word struck me like lightning. My chest constricted, my head spinning. I turned from one parent to the other, both of them locked in a silent war. And for the first time, I realized that their battle had never ended. It had simply been buried inside the silence of our home. What truth? I whispered. Neither of them answered. They just stared at each other, hatred radiating like fire. And in that silence, in that unbearable tension, something inside me broke. I realized that my wedding day, the day that was supposed to be about joy and unity, was about to unravel into something darker, something I had never expected. I had a choice. I could shut it all out, pretend this wasn't happening, force the day back into order and walk down the aisle as if nothing had changed. Or I could face it, the pain, the lies, the secrets that had defined my entire life. And for the first time in 30 years, I wasn't willing to be blind anymore. I turned to them, my voice shaking but fierce. No more. Not today. If you're here, if you've come back after 10 years, you owe me the truth. Both of you. All of it. The room fell silent again. The kind of silence that happens before earthquakes split the ground. And that's how my wedding day truly began. Not with vows, not with rings, but with revelations that would tear apart everything I thought I knew about my family, my mother's disappearance, and the life I believed was mine. The silence that followed my demand was suffocating, like the room itself was holding its breath. My bridesmaids shifted uncomfortably, their satin dresses whispering as they moved, but no one dared speak. My father's face had gone white, as if my words had cut through the armor he'd worn all these years. My mother, on the other hand, seemed to grow taller, steadier, as though she had been waiting for this moment. "You want the truth?" she asked, her voice trembling but resolute. "Then you'll have it, even if it destroys us all." Her words chilled me. Destroys us all. I wasn't sure I could handle that. Not standing there in my wedding dress, the veil still trembling with my breaths. But I couldn't step back. Not now. For too long, I'd lived in shadows, in half-truths and silence. My father shook his head furiously. "Claire, don't listen to her. She abandoned us. She abandoned you. That's all you need to know." I looked at him, my heart splintering. "Dad, if that's true, then why are you so afraid of me hearing her side?" His eyes flickered. Fear, again, I realized. A deep, buried fear that twisted my stomach. He opened his mouth, but my mother cut him off. "I didn't abandon you," she said, her voice breaking. "I was forced to leave. I had no choice." The words crashed over me, filling me with confusion and rage. Forced? By who? By him? She nodded slowly, tears brimming in her eyes. My father's voice thundered across the room. "Lies! She's lying to you, Claire. She left because she chose another life, another man. Don't let her poison you on your wedding day." But something about his words rang hollow. For years I had repeated them to myself. She left. She chose to leave us. She didn't love me enough to stay. But hearing them now, on this day, with her standing right in front of me, they felt rehearsed, convenient. I shook my head, my throat burning. "No, I want details. If you were forced, tell me why. Tell me everything." Her lips trembled. She looked at me with such a mixture of love and sorrow that my chest ached. "Because your father wasn't the man you thought he was. And because staying meant losing you in a way worse than leaving." I staggered back a step, my hands clutching at the vanity for support. My bridesmaids exchanged horrified glances, unsure if they should leave or stay, but I didn't care. The world was collapsing around me, and I couldn't move. My father's voice grew sharp, venomous. "Don't you dare, Evelyn. Don't you dare ruin her life with your lies." Her eyes burned with fury as she turned to him. "Her life was already ruined the day you decided secrets were better than truth." My chest felt like it was being crushed. "What secrets?" Neither of them answered right away. The silence stretched, pulling me apart. Finally, my mother looked back at me and whispered, "The secret of who you really are." The room spun. My ears rang. I gripped the vanity so hard I thought it might crack under my hands. What do you mean?" Tears streaked down her face. "You're not just his daughter. You're mine, but not his. You belong to someone else." The floor dropped from beneath me. My stomach lurched, my vision blurred. Not his daughter? My whole life, my entire identity, ripped apart in one sentence. I turned to my father, desperate, begging. "Tell me she's lying. Please." But he couldn't. His face was twisted in pain, his fists clenched, his jaw locked. And in that silence, in his inability to deny it, I knew. I knew she was telling the truth. I felt like I was drowning. "So, all this time, all these years, you knew I wasn't yours? And you never told me?" His voice cracked, hoarse with anguish. "I raised you. I fed you. I gave you everything. Does blood matter more than that?" "Yes," I cried, my voice shattering. "Because you let me grow up thinking I was unwanted by her, when really it was you keeping me from knowing who I was." The room erupted into chaos. My aunt shouted at my mother to leave. My bridesmaids whispered frantically, unsure what to do. but all I could see was the broken image of my family collapsing in front of me, the lies unraveling like a tapestry torn apart. My mother reached for me, her hands trembling. "Claire, I never stopped loving you. Not for a single day. The man you thought abandoned us wasn't me, it was him. He forced me out when he found out the truth, and he threatened me. He told me if I stayed, he'd make sure you hated me forever. So I left, thinking it was the only way to protect you." My heart hammered in my chest, every beat louder than the last. Could it be true? Had my father driven her away, built a wall of lies around me just to keep me his? I looked at him again, desperate for denial, desperate for something to hold on to, but his silence spoke louder than any words could. Rage surged through me. 10 years of pain, of loneliness, of feeling abandoned, all of it rooted in a secret that should have been mine to know. "You lied to me," I whispered, my voice shaking. "You both did." "But you," I pointed at him, my hands trembling. "You stole my mother from me. You stole 10 years of my life." His eyes filled with tears, but I couldn't feel sympathy. Not then. Not when the weight of betrayal pressed down on me like chains. Michael, my fiancé, appeared in the doorway then, his face pale with confusion. He looked from me to my mother, then to my father, trying to piece together the storm he had walked into. "Claire, what's happening?" I turned to him, my chest heaving, and for a moment I wanted to collapse into his arms, to let him hold me together. But I couldn't. Not yet. Not until I got answers. "I need to know everything," I said firmly, looking at both my parents. "No more half-truths. No more lies. If you want me to go through with this wedding, if you want me to move forward with my life, then you're going to tell me who I really am, and why you buried it." The air was thick with dread. My mother nodded slowly, resolute. My father clenched his fist but said nothing. She sat down on the edge of the bed, her hands trembling as she folded them in her lap. "The man who fathered you wasn't your dad. His name was Daniel. He was someone I loved before your father and I married. But life doesn't always go the way we plan. By the time I knew I was carrying you, I was already bound to your father. He promised to raise you as his own, but when the truth came out, his pride couldn't bear it. He told me to leave or he'd destroy me, and so I left, thinking I was protecting you." Her words cut through me like knives. My whole life, my identity rewritten in a single moment. I wasn't who I thought I was. My father wasn't my father. My mother hadn't abandoned me. She had been banished. But still, the wound was raw. "You should have fought for me," I whispered. "You should have come back sooner." 10 years, Mom. 10 years I needed you." Her tears spilled freely now. "I know. And I'll regret it for the rest of my life. But I was scared. I thought staying away was safer. I thought you'd hate me less if I wasn't there to confuse you." I shook my head, fury and sorrow twisting inside me. I already hated you. For leaving, for not fighting. Don't you see? Silence was worse than the truth. It always is. The weight of it all was unbearable. I couldn't breathe. I ripped the veil from my head, tossing it aside, and stormed out of the room. The halls of the venue blurred around me, voices echoing, but I couldn't stop. I needed air. I needed space. I burst through the back doors into the garden, gasping, tears streaming down my face. My chest ached. My heart cracked wide open. My wedding day was supposed to be the beginning of a new life, and instead, it had become the day my old life shattered into pieces. Michael followed me, his footsteps crunching on the gravel. "Claire, please, talk to me." I spun around, my vision blurred with tears. "How am I supposed to marry you when I don't even know who I am anymore?" Everything I thought I knew about my family was a lie. How do I stand at that altar and pretend I'm whole when I'm broken? He stepped closer, his voice gentle but firm, "Because you're not defined by their lies. You're defined by your choices. And right now, you have one. Let this destroy you, or let it free you. His words struck deep. Freedom. Could truth, even painful truth, be a kind of freedom? I didn't know. All I knew was that the girl who walked into that dressing room this morning was gone. In her place stood someone else. Someone who had to decide what to do with the wreckage of secrets, betrayal, and love twisted into lies. Behind us, I heard the faint sound of footsteps. I turned, and there stood my mother, watching me with eyes full of sorrow and love. And behind her, my father, rigid, haunted, desperate to hold on to something he had already lost. And I realized then that this day wasn't about weddings anymore. It was about survival. It was about truth, and it was only the beginning. The garden air clung to my skin like damp linen, heavy and suffocating despite the open sky above me. My gown, once a symbol of hope, now felt like a cage, layers of silk and lace pressing down on me, whispering lies of purity and joy, when all I felt was filth and betrayal. My mother stepped closer, hesitating, as if afraid I might shatter if she moved too fast. My father kept his distance, standing like a stone statue at the edge of the path. His eyes locked on me with something that looked like regret, but I was too raw to interpret it. "Claire," my mother whispered, her voice trembling, "I know you're hurting. I can't undo the years, but I can give you answers now. Please, let me tell you everything." My body shook, every nerve screaming. "You had 10 years to tell me. 10 years to show up, to fight for me, to write even one damn letter, and you waited until today, the day I thought I was finally escaping the pain of my past. Why?" Her lips parted, but no sound came. Then, after a long pause, she murmured, "Because the truth is dangerous. More dangerous than you realize. And I thought if I stayed away, it would keep you safe." I let out a bitter laugh that cracked in my throat. Safe? Do I look safe to you? Do I sound safe? I grew up with a hole in my heart so big I thought it would swallow me whole. You call that safe? Her face crumpled, tears streaking down her cheeks. She reached for me, but I stepped back, shaking my head violently. Michael touched my shoulder gently, grounding me. "Claire, maybe hearing her out will give you peace." I wanted to scream at him, tell him he didn't understand, that peace was impossible when your whole life was built on lies. But something in his steady gaze pulled me back from the edge. He wasn't taking sides. He was reminding me I still had a choice. "Fine," I spat, turning to my mother. "Talk. Tell me everything. No more riddles, no more silence." She took a deep, shaky breath, her eyes darting toward my father. "Your biological father, Daniel, he wasn't just anyone. He was your father's brother." The words slammed into me like a freight train. My knees buckled, and I had to grab Michael's arm to stay upright. My uncle?" The word tasted like poison in my mouth. She nodded, sobbing now. "We never meant for it to happen. It was before I married your father. Daniel and I, we were young, reckless. But when I found out I was pregnant, your father insisted on marrying me anyway. He swore he would raise you as his own. I thought we could bury the past. I thought love could fix what we had broken." I staggered back, shaking my head. "So my entire life, I've been a living reminder of your betrayal to him?" Her sobs grew heavier, her shoulders trembling. "Yes. And that's why he forced me out. He couldn't bear to look at me anymore. But I never stopped loving you, Claire, not once." I turned to my father, my vision blurred with tears. "Is it true? All of it?" He looked away, his jaw clenched so tightly the muscle in his cheek twitched. "It doesn't matter who fathered you. I'm the one who stayed. I'm the one who gave you everything. He didn't. She didn't. I did." My chest heaved with fury. "You gave me lies. You gave me silence. You let me grow up thinking my mother was a selfish coward, when really you banished her to hide your shame." He flinched, but his voice rose with anger. "What was I supposed to do? Parade you around as proof of her betrayal? Let everyone know my wife had a child with my own brother? Do you have any idea what that would have done to me? To our family's name? I clenched my fist so tight my nails bit into my palms. So my entire life was about your pride? About protecting your name while I grew up hollow inside? He opened his mouth, but no words came. He just stood there, broken. A man who had chosen ego over love. For a moment, the world blurred around me. The roses, the soft rustle of leaves, the faint laughter from guests waiting inside. All of it felt like a cruel backdrop to the collapse of everything I thought I knew. Michael's arm was still steady under mine, but I pulled away, needing to stand on my own even if my legs shook beneath me. "Daniel," I whispered, the name foreign and bitter on my tongue. "Where is he?" "My real father," my mother swallowed hard. "He's gone. He died 5 years ago." A hollow scream tore from my chest. The man I had never known, the father I had been denied. Gone forever. Before I even had a chance to look into his eyes. "You both robbed me," I whispered. "You!" I pointed at my father. "You stole my mother from me. And you," I turned to her, my voice breaking. "You stole my father. You let me believe he was just some shadow when he was flesh and blood, and now I'll never know him." They both wept silently, each carrying their own guilt, but I felt no sympathy. Not yet. The wound was too fresh, the betrayal too deep. The wedding bells began to ring faintly from the chapel, signaling that it was time for the ceremony. The sound was surreal, a cruel reminder that somewhere inside people were laughing, waiting, expecting joy. But here, in this garden, my world was falling apart. Michael looked at me, his eyes full of worry. "Claire, what do you want to do? We can call it off, we can postpone, or we can face it together. Whatever you need." I stared at him, my vision blurring again with tears. How can I walk down that aisle when I don't even know who I am anymore? I feel like I've been living someone else's life. He cupped my face gently, forcing me to look into his eyes. "You're Claire. You're the woman I love. You're not defined by their lies or by their choices. You are who you decide to be. And if you let me, I'll spend my life reminding you of that." His words were like a balm on my shattered soul, but the ache remained. Behind us, my parents stood like ruins of a battlefield, their war still burning, their secrets finally unearthed. I took a deep breath, my chest aching, and said, "I need time. I can't pretend this didn't happen, but I can't let it steal everything from me either. If I go through with this wedding, it has to be because I choose it, not because I'm running from the truth." Michael nodded, his thumb brushing away my tears. "Then take your time. The guests can wait. They'll understand." But I knew they wouldn't. In their eyes, the wedding was about flowers and vows and champagne toasts. None of them would understand that for me, it was now about survival. I turned back to my parents, my voice shaking but firm. "You will both leave. Now. I can't do this with you standing here, bleeding your secrets into my life. You've already taken too much. I won't let you take this, too." My mother looked devastated, but she nodded slowly, tears streaming down her face. My father clenched his fists but said nothing, his pride finally broken into silence. As they turned to leave, I felt an emptiness I couldn't name. Relief, sorrow, fury. They tangled inside me, impossible to separate. When they were gone, I sank onto a stone bench, my gown pooling around me like spilled milk. Michael sat beside me, his hand finding mine, warm and steady. "I don't know how to forgive them," I whispered. "I don't even know if I want to." "You don't have to," he said softly. "Not today. Not tomorrow. Maybe not ever. Forgiveness isn't for them. It's for you. And right now, you don't owe them that." His words settled into me like seeds, and though I couldn't yet believe them, I clung to them like a lifeline. The wedding bells rang again, louder this time, and I realized the guest must be growing restless. But I didn't move. Not yet. For 30 years I had lived in the shadow of their lies. Today, for the first time, I stood in the light of truth, and it was blinding. Michael squeezed my hand. Whatever you decide, I'm here. If you want to walk away from all of it, I'll walk with you. If you want to face it head on, I'll stand beside you. Just don't forget, you're not alone anymore. I looked at him, at the man who had chosen me despite my broken pieces, and I knew that in the wreckage of this day, he was the one thing I could trust. But I also knew this wasn't the end. Truth has a way of unearthing more truth, and somewhere deep in my gut, I sensed that this was only the first crack in the wall. There were still pieces missing, still shadows lurking behind the story they had given me, and I wasn't sure if I was ready for them. But one thing was certain. I wasn't going back to silence. Not ever again. I didn't walk down the aisle that day, at least not in the way people expected. The guests waited, whispers rippling like waves through the chapel, until finally Michael and I stepped inside, not with smiles and music, but with honesty written all over my tear-streaked face. I remember the silence, the way everyone's heads turned, the confusion that sparked in their eyes when they realized the fairy tale wedding they had come to witness was unraveling into something darker, more real. I stood at the altar without my veil, my gown rumpled from the storm I'd endured outside, my hands trembling in Michael's. The priest opened his mouth to speak, but I lifted a hand to stop him. My voice shook as I said, I can't pretend, not today. I came here to build a new life, but this morning I learned my old life was built on lies. My parents, the people I trusted to give me truth, gave me silence instead. And I refused to step into marriage carrying the weight of their secrets on my back. Gasps echoed. My aunt buried her face in her hands. Some guests exchanged awkward glances, but I didn't care. For the first time in my life, I was speaking for myself. I turned to Michael, my voice breaking. I love you. I want to marry you. But I can't stand here today and make promises until I know who I am beneath the lies. I need to find that girl again, or maybe find her for the very first time. His eyes glistened, but he nodded, his voice steady. Then I'll wait. As long as it takes. The ceremony never happened. Guests left murmuring, confused, some judgmental, some sympathetic. My father stormed away in silence, his pride in shards, while my mother stood at the edge of the crowd, her shoulders slumped, her eyes begging for forgiveness I couldn't yet give. The next weeks were a blur of pain and searching. I couldn't eat, couldn't sleep. Every reflection in the mirror felt like a stranger staring back. Who was I? Daughter of Evelyn? Niece of Daniel? Raised by a man who wasn't truly my father? Or was I simply Claire, a woman broken, but still breathing? I started digging. If truth was a knife, I wanted to feel its blade fully. I tracked down old records, photos, even letters my father had hidden in the attic. There, in a box coated with dust, I found fragments of my real father's handwriting, pieces of a man who had been erased from my story. He had written letters to me, letters my mother had never been allowed to give me. My sweet Claire, one of them read, I don't know if you'll ever know me, but you carry my blood and my love. Even if I am not allowed in your life, you are mine in ways no one can erase. I wept for hours, clutching the pages until they crumpled in my fists. All those years of believing I wasn't wanted, and all along, there had been love for me, hidden in shadows. My father, the man I had called Dad, had stolen those letters, burying them so I would never know the truth. Rage burned hotter than grief. I confronted him weeks later, slamming the box of letters onto his kitchen table. He looked older, smaller than I had ever seen him, but I couldn't summon pity. "You lied," I said, my voice sharp. "You robbed me of him." "You robbed me of knowing I was loved." His eyes filled with tears, but his words were bitter. "I raised you. I fed you. Those letters wouldn't have changed that." "They would have changed everything," I spat. "They would have given me hope. They would have given me the truth. You let me live in emptiness because you couldn't handle your shame. That's not love, it's cruelty." For the first time in my life, I walked out of his house without looking back. My relationship with my mother was harder. She tried every day to call me, to explain, to apologize. Sometimes I answered. Sometimes I screamed. Sometimes I hung up before she could speak. Trust doesn't rebuild overnight, especially not after 10 years of silence. But in her voice, I heard something I hadn't heard in my father's. Desperation to make it right. Months passed, and slowly, I began to see her not as the villain of my childhood, but as a broken woman who had been cornered, who had made choices out of fear, not malice. She had failed me, yes, but she had also been failed by the man who should have stood beside her. One afternoon, I met her at the grave of Daniel, my real father. The headstone was simple, his name etched into stone that was already weathering with time. My mother placed fresh flowers at the base, her hands trembling. "I brought him roses," she whispered. "They were his favorite." I knelt by the grave, tracing his name with my fingers. My heart ached with the weight of absence. I wish I could have met him. Tears slid down her cheeks. "He would have loved you so much. He did love you, more than you'll ever know." And for the first time, I let her hold me. I wept into her arms, mourning a man I never knew and a childhood I never had. It wasn't forgiveness, not yet, but it was the first crack in the wall I had built between us. Michael stood by me through it all, patient, steady, never pushing. Some nights I cried in his arms, telling him I didn't know if I could ever trust love again. Some nights I raged, swearing I would cut my parents out of my life forever. Through it all, he stayed, reminding me that my worth wasn't tied to their choices, but to mine. Nearly a year later, on a quiet spring morning, I put on the gown again. Not for a grand wedding, not for an audience of strangers, but for myself. Michael and I married in a small garden with only a handful of people who had earned the right to stand by us. My aunt, despite her bitterness, came. My mother came too, standing quietly in the back, tears shining in her eyes as she watched me walk toward the man who had chosen me through fire and storm. My father wasn't there. He hadn't spoken to me in months. Part of me grieved for that, but another part felt free. When I said my vows, I didn't promise perfection. I promised truth. I promised never to let silence poison our love. I promised to choose honesty, even when it hurt. And as I looked into Michael's eyes, I knew I was rewriting the story I had been given. Now, looking back, I realized betrayal doesn't just break you. It remakes you. It tears down the illusions you've been forced to live under and leaves you standing naked in the light of truth. It hurts like hell, but it also frees you. My mother disappeared for 10 years, but her absence taught me the weight of silence. My father lied for 30 years, but his lies taught me the value of truth. And I learned that identity isn't given to us by blood or by the secrets of others. Identity is what we choose to claim, even when the past claws at us like chains. If you're listening to this story, maybe you know the weight of betrayal too. Maybe you've been lied to, abandoned, or forced to carry wounds you didn't deserve. Let me tell you, you can survive it. You can take their silence, their lies, their betrayal, and build something stronger from it. You can rise from it, not untouched, not unscarred, but alive, real, and yours. And that's what I chose. That's who I became. So if you've been walking with the weight of secrets on your back, I want you to hear me now. The truth may hurt, but it will also set you free. Don't let silence steal your life the way it stole mine for so many years. You deserve more. You deserve to be whole. Thank you for staying with me through this journey, for listening to the raw, broken, messy truth of my story. If it touched you, if it made you think of your own battles, your own scars, please share it with someone who needs to hear it. Like this video, leave a comment with your story, and subscribe so you don't miss the next chapter of healing, truth, and survival. Together, maybe we can remind each other that even betrayal can be turned into strength.